Yes and no. So should we expect our leaders to have that character? Yeah. I mean, there should be a desire that the leaders that we have over our respective governments in which we live would be righteous. We want our kings, our leaders, our governors. We want them to live in righteousness, and everybody's going to be judged according to that standard of righteousness. When we get to the final judgment before the great white throne of judgment, as we read about there in Matthew 25, Jesus is going to be judging the world according to his standard of righteousness and holiness. Now, we have that righteousness by faith in Christ. He has clothed us in his righteousness. And as Paul said in Romans chapter 3, do we then overthrow the law by this faith? Meganoita is the phrase in Greek. By no means. On the contrary, we uphold the law. So now that we've been given the righteousness of Christ, we can keep the law of God in a way that is righteous and pleasing to him, whereas previously we could not. So we are expected to live in righteousness. As Jesus said, the first and greatest commands are these, that you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and you love your neighbor as yourself. Now, none of us, I think, would dispute that we are to keep those laws, but those laws are summarizing the law of God that is given to us, the first and second table of the law, that you love God and that you love others. So we do expect those leaders to live according to this same law, because this is the standard of righteousness that has been given. At the same time, we don't expect leaders to live according to that law, because if that leader is not a follower of Jesus Christ, then of course they're not going to keep that law. And the standard of righteousness that a leader imposes upon its citizens is going to be his own standard. It's not going to be the standard of God. Now, we would hope and we would desire that he understand what God's righteousness is, and that we would live in a land that would have that righteousness. But we understand realistically that we don't live in that kingdom yet. And the king that we have, or the ruler, the governor that we have in the present nation in which we live, is not Christ. And Israel made that mistake time and time again. You see that all the way through 1st and 2nd Kings. They expected that king was going to be the one who was going to be the fulfillment of the Davidic covenant. And time again, they were let down and disappointed. We have 40 kings that are mentioned in 1st and 2nd Kings. Only 8 of them lived in such a way that was even considered to be of the same standard of David, and yet was still not the fulfillment of that Davidic covenant. All of those kings died. But Jesus Christ comes, and he not only dies, he rises again from the grave, ascends to heaven where he is reigning now. So he is ultimately the king of righteousness that we are living for. And we should expect a standard of righteousness from those kings that we live under in the present, but we understand that they're not going to be, because they are not Christ.